I'm going to let you look at and encourage you to look at the sheet that I'm giving you for tonight. It does have two sides on it. I would like for you to look at the side that has the graph on it. And at the top it says table number 1. One of the things that is important when we start talking about grief is the understanding that even though there are, quote, steps of grief, steps of recovery, they don't work one after the other. They overlap. And what that graph shows you is that if you go to the bottom of the graph where it says shock, the shock does last depending upon the situation and depending upon your personality. The period of shock where you just feel like you're not able to do much of anything, you're taken back completely, overwhelmed, that can last as few as just a few hours, or it can last sometimes a week or 10 days. But usually that passes. But the interesting thing about shock is there may occur other occasions where it comes back at you. As one example that I've seen is if someone is pretty much over the shock, then a relative, a very close relative who's been living far away comes into town and they see each other, that shock almost comes again. But it's much usually short-lived. And if you move up a step, and I'm using Bill Flatt, incidentally, Bill Flatt has written a book called Growing Through Grief. It's a very short book, has very good information in it. I do recommend it. Mine is all underlined in red because I like to underline in red or blue, and this one happened to be, I happen to have the red pencil at this time. But it talks about each of these particular stages in his book. Others will only have about 6 stages, some will have 7 or 8. It depends on the writer, because each writer of books about grief comes at it from their own perspective and normally their own experience. And so as a result, Bill is coming at this out of the loss of his mother and his reactions to it. And out of that loss, he and a friend of his developed a group recovery session and has since, starting that, has worked with over 500 people through those group recovery groups that he does, and he lives in Memphis, Tennessee. So this is a good book. As we go up his list of lamentation, that's a period of deep sorrow, and then withdrawal. I remember when I was told that I was going to have surgery for cancer, I wanted to withdraw, and for me that feeling of withdrawal lasted about 2 days. For some people, it lasts a whole lot longer. The period of withdrawal is basically when we draw back and we saying, okay, I need to get a grip on things. I need to understand what's really going on. I need to figure out where I'm going to go from here. But what I wanted you to see, and I'm not going to go over all these, is that these feelings, these emotions, these situations come and go. I use waves of the ocean to describe them. When we first hear, sometimes we're hit by a tsunami that's just huge and overwhelming, and we are tossed about like a stick in a big wave. But the waves tend to get smaller. They tend to come less often. But every once in a while, a big one will come. And people don't understand why a big one comes. And the answer is because you're human. And because we normally work our way through grief, and it's not a smooth process. It's a process of change, accepting things that are now compared to the way things used to be. Now, go down to the bottom part of that page, and you'll see something that one of the sources said you need to write on your 3 to 5 card and put one of them on your mirror, one of them on the refrigerator, and carry one in your pocket, or your purse. And look at it and read it out loud to yourself 3 or 4 times a day. As an example, I will not always feel as I do now. Why would you need to be telling yourself that? Well, the answer is obvious. Because some people think it'll never be different, but it will. And so you need to remind yourself again and again and again that I will not always feel the way that I do now. The second one, I am doing okay. Grief will not hurt me. You see, grieving is something we do. It's not something done to us, it's something we do. The loss is what happens to us, and the grieving for the loss is how we work our way through the grief. And it is a process, and it is work, and it is hard work, and sometimes it is very painful work. The third one, I will make it through my loss as others have theirs. This is based upon the idea that it is very helpful to find people who have been through what you have been through and have come through successfully and have worked their way. Come on in, have a seat, and we have a couple of things for you. And then the last one is, I will not ignore nor rush through my grief. And when I talk about rushing through grief, most people, when they hurt, want to get it over as quickly as possible. How do they do that? Well, sometimes they deny it. They just simply play like it didn't happen. Kay and I watch Hallmark movies every once in a while, and one of the most common things that they portray on there is someone who shoves it in the back closet. They don't work their way through it, and as a result, it affects their life much, much, much longer than it should. I know that when I have surgery, and I've had a few, I want the pain to quit as soon as possible, and what other people do, they will alcohol it, or they will drug it, or they will get so busy doing something they don't remember it. That's a way of denying it. And so grief is something you can't rush. You have to work your way through it and accept the pain when it comes as a sign of your care and your concern. Otherwise, you wouldn't hurt. You only hurt because you care. And so what you're actually experiencing is the depth of your care and concern, and in most cases, love. For you see, the grieving that you do for someone you've lost that you love is essentially about the last thing that you'll be able to do. And that's one of the reasons it hurts so much, is because you loved so much. And I don't know of anyone who would say, I would rather have never loved my wife, never seen her, never loved my husband, than to go through the pain of their loss. Most people say, yes, I hate this pain, but I do it all over again because I love that woman, I love that man, I love the child, I love my parents. Grieving is an indication of the significance of your love. Turn your page over to the back side. What I have discovered in every one of the books that I have read, I'll show you another one. This one is called No Time for Goodbyes. Sometimes death occurs quickly, and it is more of a shock in one sense than if someone dies a natural process of going through illness and so forth, hospitalization and so forth. But this was written by the lady who started the MAD organization, Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, because she had family killed by a drunk driver. And this book is designed to help people who are experiencing that kind of sudden and tragic loss. It's even, there's people in this book who have had relatives killed relatives commit suicide, someone they love commits suicide. Those kind of deaths seem to have a greater initial shock and a longer term of recovery, which is, listen to me, normal. Normal. And I want to tell you, and I want you to understand this with all your heart, your normal is not my normal. My normal is not my wife's normal. Your normal is only yours. It's only yours. No one else goes through grief like you do. Your grief is yours, and you will go through it in your own normal way. In spite of the fact that there are a lot of people who say, I think I'm going crazy. I can't remember where I put my car keys. I go into a room, and I don't even know why I went in that room. I do that sometimes anyway, and I'm not particularly grieving about something right at the moment. I just do it more often than I used to. But I'm not talking about doing it occasionally. I'm talking about a consistent forgetfulness. And people say, I guess I'm losing my mind. No, you're not. Your mind is to a great degree like a telephone switchboard. Back in the old days, okay, maybe we can remember the old days. It's kind of like you've got 8 or 10 lines. And when those lines all get busy with your grief, with your memories, with your what if questions, with your why questions, then other things just don't have a place to plug in. When you get too busy doing something, even when it's something you're rejoicing about, something that makes you so happy you can't stand it, is that a good expression? So happy you can't stand it, you will also forget things because your switchboard is loaded with happiness and things about that happy event. And the same thing happens with grief. Our mind can get overloaded. Now, on the back side, you're going to notice how to relax your tension. One book, this is one here written by Gary Rowe. Incidentally, Gary Rowe has written about 9 books on dealing with grief. And this book is very interesting in that it has 70 chapters. And the reason it has 70 chapters is because each chapter is a very short response to a question that Gary has heard people ask as he has dealt with people who are dealing with grief. I'm going to read you about 3 or 4 of the questions. Here's one. How can I use my grief for good? That's on page 221. Question number 50, where did everyone go? Well, people who are experiencing grief normally will have a number of people come to their aid in the first week. Slacks off in the second week, and when you really get to needing them, they think you're okay, and you really need them, but they're not there. And so, where does everybody go? Number 54, why doesn't anyone talk about them? Back to a bunch of the others. Why am I so tired all the time? How do I deal with grief attacks? Are mental blackouts normal in grief? And so this book is designed not so much to be read through, you're welcome to do it that way, but it's for you to kind of say, what I'm dealing with right now, I'm going to see if there's anything in here that kind of, yeah, here's one. Is it okay to feel numb? And so you may just want to turn over to page 37 and read about 2.5 pages, because that's all it is on the answer to that question. And one of the things that this author, along with others, recommend seriously is learning how to relax. You can do that before you come into areas of grief. because learning how to relax is helpful when you're stressed out over things that are not grief. You may be stressed out over your job. You may be stressed out over a plumbing leak at your house. You may be stressed out over the fact that your car won't start and you heard that it's going to cost $2,000 to get it fixed. And so how do you get rid of stress? And I'm going to read you through this one. This is a method that I've used in counseling for years to help people relax, as well as myself. It'll help you go to sleep at night even. You start off by, you start off by tensing muscle groups, and you start off with your face. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. It'll be ugly. Are you ready? You start off by tensing the muscles in your face lightly for 10 seconds. And then you relax those muscles as much as you possibly can. Breathe deeply for about 3 or 4 times. Then you tense these muscles again more tightly. And you let them relax slowly as much as you possibly can. And the third time, I'm not going to do it. The third time you tense that muscle in your face as much as you can, hold it 10 seconds and relax, and you will feel a tingling in those muscles. And the tingling is the blood rushing back in. And each time you do this, when you do the relaxing part, you think about, I'm letting myself relax. Then you do the muscles in your neck, your shoulders, your arms, your hands, your abdomen, your hips, your thighs, your calves, your feet, and we're looking at anywhere between 15 and 25 minutes. You will be amazed at how relaxed you feel at the end of that time. And this is one of the things that is highly recommended by all of those who deal with grief. When you feel so uptight and nothing is right, and you don't realize it, but have you ever been sitting down somewhere and suddenly realized, I'm tense? Have you ever done that? And then you go, and about 5 minutes later you think, I'm tense again. And so this exercise will work. And I would recommend you do it sometimes in an easy chair or laying down, because you may not complete it. You may go to sleep before it's over. Now, I'm saving this last one until we get into this part itself, because I want us to understand we actually can prepare for grief. We can prepare ourselves mentally. We can prepare ourselves to know what to expect. We can prepare ourselves to know who to go and talk to in times of grief. And I realize this is, people may say, well, Bill, you're just looking for trouble. No, I'm not. I'm preparing for trouble. The reason I have a jack and a spare in my car is not because I'm hoping I'll have a flat, but it is in case I do. And so these preparation steps can help. Grief often comes like lightning and thunder. Within, I think about 3 weeks ago, we had one of the loudest thunderstorms come through that we've had in a couple of years, at least at our house. At first, I heard the rumbling in a distance. Y'all ever hear this? Just barely hear it. And if you're standing outside, you may not even see a flash anywhere. You just hear the rumbling. And you know, sometimes losses are like that. The little bitty losses, the things that don't amount to much. But with interest, I listened to see if the rumbling was going to go away or get louder. it got louder. And pretty soon, I began to see the flashes, and I would start counting. 1, 2, 3. If I got up to 10, it meant it was more than a mile away. But I'll tell you what, class, I had 5 lightning bolts that I was unable to count 1 second between the lightning bolt and the clap of thunder that followed. And that's what serious loss is like. No wonder we experience shock. No wonder we experience numbness. No wonder, because the event is like the lightning bolt, and the thunder that rumbles sometimes on and on is like the grief that we may go through. Let's get into some other things right now. Grief is a reaction to loss. It can be a loss of a death. It can be the loss of a job. One of the experiences that some of you have had, that I know personally you've had it, is it's the loss of the old home place. Because your children want you to move and be close to them. Or because something has happened and financially you can't maintain the old place. And besides that, who needs a 4-bedroom house when it's just one person? And so it may be the old home place and you have to move away from the home place. And it hurts. Because this new place doesn't feel like home, and no matter what you do, it just doesn't seem to feel quite like home. It may get that way, or it may not get that way. It kind of depends on how you decide to deal with it. But look at this. The one who brought the news replied, and this is talking about a battle that the Israelites were having. They had taken the Ark of the Covenant into battle, and Eli's 2 sons had gone into battle too, and Eli is home, sitting down, waiting for the news. Then one who brought the news replied, Eli has said, what has happened? Israel has fled before the Philistines, and there has also been a great slaughter among the people, and your 2 sons also, Hophni and Phinehas, are dead, and the ark has been taken. And when he mentioned the ark of God, Eli fell off the seat backward beside the gate, and his neck was broken, and he died. For he was old and heavy. He had judged Israel 40 years. And his daughter-in-law, who was pregnant, immediately started childbirth in the next 2 or 3 verses. Grief is a reaction to loss. And what happened to Eli was a normal reaction of falling when he lost, especially the Ark of the Covenant. There's another fellow who experienced a loss, and this one was different. He was about to go into battles. King Saul was. God had withdrawn his spirit from him. And King Saul went to a woman who said she could conjure up Samuel, and she did, apparently much to her surprise. And Samuel said, why have you bothered me? And Saul said, well, I'm about to go into battle, and God won't talk to me anymore. What's going to happen? And here's Samuel's reply. Moreover, the Lord will also give over Israel along with you into the hands of the Philistines. Therefore, tomorrow you and your sons will be with me. And what happened in verse 20? Saul immediately fell full length upon the ground and was very afraid because of the words of Samuel. Anticipated loss, real loss, hits us hard. And when it does, we need to accept that blow as normal reaction because of the depth of our concern and involvement in the situation. And even though we cannot prepare for the shock itself, there are some things we can do to prepare ourselves when shock does come. I don't know if I should call these our jack and spare tire or not, but I hope you get the comparison. We need to carry tools in the trunk of our life so that when disaster comes, we at least have some idea of what to do next and what to expect. We need to understand these 4 facts about grief recovery, and we need to understand them before grief comes. And if we're in grief, we need to remember and understand these. Number 1, the way out of grief is through it. You don't get around it, you don't get over it, you don't get under it, you go through it. You accept it as the price you pay for the concern and love that you have. And I want you to understand that the greater your pain, that is a reflection of the depth of your love and concern. Be grateful that your depth of love was that great, even though it hurts. Number two, the very worst kind of grief is yours. People will come to you and they may say, I know how you feel. They really don't. Even I've lost my mother and Kay has lost her mother. I cannot say to Kay, I know exactly how you feel. All I can say to her is, I know how I felt when I lost my mother. And I know it hurt for me and it must hurt for you. That's the way we tell people, while we cannot understand how you feel, we can tell them how we felt. And if we have never experienced that particular loss, we will not be able to say anything other than, I don't know how you feel, and I can only imagine how I would feel. Because I've had people actually become very angry because I have heard someone say to someone else in my presence, I know how you feel, and with anger, they said, nobody knows how I feel. Nobody has ever hurt like I'm hurting now. And so we are very careful in letting people know we don't understand, but we care. We care. It makes a difference. The next one, grief is hard work. Accept that as a reality. Don't try to deny it when the wave of grief comes. Just say, I know I can survive this. I understand this pain is coming from my concern about my loss, the situation, and I will survive. I will survive. And that's when all the books I have read said that's when you need to start breathing deeply. And we'll get into more of that in a little bit later. Number 4, effective grief work is not done alone. Many people will hide and deny their grief because they don't want to share it, because they feel their grief is too deep to be shared with anybody. But the truth is, there are other people, probably friends of yours, who have suffered deep grief also. And they will listen as you talk. It does need to be someone you trust. It does need to be someone who's not going to try to fix you, but someone who's willing to let you talk as you heal yourself with the help of God. So you can understand these things before grief comes. When grief comes, I will work my way through it. When grief comes, I will understand that I am unique and I am one of a kind, and I'm going to go through grief like nobody else. It's going to be my grief and I'll go through it. And it's going to be hard. It's going to take work. And it's going to take a mindset willing to say, I am going to get through this. And I'm going to get help. I'm not going to try to do it alone. And of course, if grief gets severe enough, then you go get professional help, people who are trained. I have given you those things to write on a card, and since I put them on the handout, I'm not going to go over them any further than what I did a while ago. Put them on the fridge, a mirror, put them in your purse or pocket, read them, because this is telling you, I can do this. I can do it. It is hard. I can do it. Others have done it. I can do it. And I know I'm not always going to feel the way I do now. Oh, and I've heard this. Gary Rowe has this. I have read, I'm only in chapter 30-something. but I have heard him say this, breathe deeply, many, many times. Almost every time. Because when we get tense about something, we tend to breathe shallow. And that cuts down the amount of oxygen. Breathing deep increases the oxygen and also increases the endorphins, which help produce better feelings. Bob Dietz calls it the 888. I'll demonstrate. You breathe in the count of 8. You hold for the count of 8. You let out the breath at the count of 8. I like 6 better than 8. Actually, I like Gary Rose better. Gary says, you smell a rose and blow out a candle. You smell a rose by breathing in through your nose slowly to catch the fragrance of the rose. But once you smell the fragrance of the rose, you let out your breath rather quickly as if you were blowing out a candle. That's exactly how you breathe when you sleep. Have you ever listened to anybody breathe when they sleep? They'll breathe in and then go. And so he recommends breathing in as slowly and deeply as is comfortable and then letting it out quickly. And do that for a couple of minutes, maybe even more, depending upon how uptight you are. And as you're breathing, focus on 2 things. You're breathing and relaxing. Relaxing under stress is one of the best things you can do for your physical body. To get it to calm down, to get the muscles to relax, and to stop being so tense. Exhale deeply. Breathe in slowly to the count of 8. Hold your breath for the count of 8. Exhale slowly for the count of 8. Wait a few seconds and then repeat. That's Bob Dietz' suggestion. And here is Gary's suggestion. He calls it the habit of deep breathing. And he wants us to do this in preparation for grief. And he wants to do it during grief. And he wants us to do it after grief anytime we feel stressed. Have y'all ever done that on purpose? I just need to stop and take a breath. Well, what you're actually saying is, I need to relax, and deep breaths will help me to do that very thing. Breathe in deeply and slowly through your nose. Exhale normally. Focus on your breathing and do it for a few moments. And then I gave you on the page how to relax your body from stress, and this is a serious operation. And here's what I encourage you to do. As you do these muscles groups, I encourage you to imagine in your mind a place that is quiet and peaceful, the most quiet and peaceful place you can imagine. Would anybody here go to the beach for such a place? I wouldn't. I'd go to the mountains. I'd find me a small mountain stream. And as I'm doing this exercise, I would imagine that I'm hearing the sound of the stream. And I'm seeing the rushing water coming down over the rocks. And I would feel the sun shining upon my face and its warmth. And I would see the different color of green in the trees. And I would hear a bird singing. Do you hear what I'm doing? I'm loading my senses with peace and calm instead of stress and anxiety. I'm pushing the bad messages out and deliberately bringing in messages of peace and quiet and serenity as I relax. because we do the opposite to ourselves time and time again. We start thinking about something that makes us anxious, which makes us think about something else that makes us anxious, and here we go. And we actually convince ourselves, unknowingly, to have a stress party when we really didn't need to. We need to learn how to relax. I'm not going to go through this again because you have it there on the sheet in front of you. Be prepared and willing to talk. Know in advance and in times of grief, you need to find somebody to talk to who will listen to you, people you trust, people you think who've experienced something close enough to what you have that they can sympathize with you and feel with you as what's going on. All of these are also suggesting that you talk out loud to yourself. If you're really angry about something, do it in private, but shout, scream, say what you think. If you're mad at somebody in particular, do this in private. And if you have thin walls, go somewhere else and do it. But talk out loud, because talking out loud will often help you to identify the specifics of what are bothering you. You see, sometimes in grief, it all comes like a big bale of hay, and we don't need the whole bale of hay. We just need a little bit of that to chew on. And sometimes talking things out help us to deal specifically with what we need to be chewing on at the moment. Another thing you can do besides talking it out is write it out. Write down your feelings. I'm going to talk about that more next Sunday evening, about keeping a journal, about what you're going on day by day, the people you come in contact with, the feelings you have, the depth of those feelings. You want to keep this journal private. It's not to be read public. But what you do with this journal is you write it, and then about at the end of a week, you read what you've written. At the end of another week, you read what you've written. And do you know what you're going to discover? I'm working my way through it. And the waves of grief are not coming quite as often and quite as heavy and hard. And so that's a record for yourself of your recovery. Talk to someone who will listen. I've already mentioned that. And you may want to give people permission to talk with you about your loss. A lot of people are afraid to mention the name of someone you lost in your presence because they think it'll hurt, not realizing that that memory is still a real part of you. That there's times you'd like to talk about a husband or a wife or a child or a parent because they're still special in your mind. They're still special in your memory. My niece lost her husband about 3 years ago and her mother about 2 years ago. And I talked to her on the phone and she said, I've been crying all day. And then she said, no, not all the time, just I've been crying about it. But the article that I wrote talks about the fact that we need to be able to talk with people about folks we've lost. And she shared that article at the assisted living place where she is in Midwest City, and she found out that one woman's husband was a fireman. And she started telling some stories about what her husband did as a fireman. She found out that another one was a CPA, another woman's husband. And she got to talk about her husband. And those are part of the healing process. Talking about those good memories work to heal so that our mind gets the privilege of losing some of the negative pain that we had and putting in its place some special memories. We need to talk about our losses because that's one way of working our way through them. This will not be helpful to everyone, but most of the time it will help most of the people. Be prepared to write. One of the things that people often don't have to deal with when they have a sudden death is, I didn't get to say goodbye. And nearly every source that I have read, going back to when I first started doing any kind of counseling and training and so forth, was sometimes you need to write the person you lost a letter, telling them how you feel, what they meant to you, and then here comes the challenging part. You write a second letter from them to you as to what you think they would be telling you. One of the things they'd probably tell you is, I want you to be happy again. I want you to enjoy life again. I want you to have good memories, yes. But I want you to use those good memories for healing. And so I'm telling you, I loved you. You'll remember that. But you have a new life to live, and I want you to live it to the full. Because you deserve it. And so you not only write a letter to the person, but you write one as if they're talking to them, because you pretty well know that the one you love that was lost wants you to have a full and meaningful life. Keep a journal about your feelings. Some people write poems about how they feel. Some people write poems about how terrible their pain is. And as time goes on, they'll start writing poems about how good it was that they had the person that they had. And then they talk about writing poems about telling this person they lost about the new life that they have and how grateful they are for how they helped them to have this good new life. Don't mail those letters. Don't mail them. You may want to tear them up after you've written them. You may want to put them in a drawer that you never open. But you are writing your feelings out, and you're letting yourself take from the person you've lost the good that you believe they would want to give to you. The initial period, shock, lamentation, withdrawal, all the authors talk about that. Some call it by different names. There is that initial shock and numbness, usually lasts a few hours up to 10 days, and it depends on several factors. It depends on your personality. It depends upon the closeness of the relationship. It depends upon, are you working your way through the grief, or are you trying to deny it? Are you trying to hide from it? Some people do. And then after that, there's that feeling of being kind of stunned and overwhelmed. Forgetfulness is a part of it, difficulty making decisions. These things are normal. Remember, your circuits are overloaded, okay? And when this leaves, the pain comes. Numbness is kind of a way that our body protects us from the depth of the pain initially. It kind of says, wow, this can't be real. And that keeps us from going into the depth of it until we're more ready to go into the depth of it. Some deny it. They have difficulty accepting the fullness of their loss. It takes time to do that. Do you hear me? It takes time to do that. Give yourself time. Don't rush it. Seeking to delay and offset the pain normally works against you because it prolongs the recovery. Many times there's loss of energy, appetite, sleep issues. You either can't sleep, you sleep all the time. Our body is having to deal with what your mind is trying to accept and deal with. You can't go through grief without your body going with you. You just take it along for the ride. Sometimes there's anger and hostility. This is one of the things that really amazed me about anger. I was pretty new at preaching it. And there was a man whose mother died. And he came into the house just stomping and angry. He said, I cannot believe it. All of those people out there driving those cars, none of them even cared that I lost my mother. And I'm thinking, no, they don't even know you lost. They don't even know your mother. But what he was doing was, he was angry and he found an object upon which he could focus his anger. So sometimes anger about a variety of things. Sometimes it's an anger if it's a tragic death. If it's a homicide or something like that, don't be surprised if the anger almost overwhelms you. Because one of the things we look for is people to blame. And did you know one of the most common people we blame? Raise your hand if you think you know who it is. Yourself. Yourself. I should have, if I would have, and we start, we got to blame somebody for death. Because this is just too serious not for something or something to be blamed. And then guess who's on the list next? God. God gets on the list. And sometimes we take blame upon ourselves rather than give blame to the person who died, when actually the blame is theirs. But if we don't blame them and blame ourselves, then they get to remain innocent and good and everything's fine. But sometimes some blame does go on them, and that's part of dealing with reality. We have to deal with reality in times of grief. Crying, hallucinations. Hallucinations, incidentally, are more common than people would like to think. People will hear the voice of someone they've lost. They will smell their perfume. They will hear footsteps in the hall. Hallucinations are common because those events are a part of our memory. They are part of our memory. And our memory, the floodgates have kind of been let down, and all kinds of memories occur. Memories of things we smell, memories of things we hear, memories of things we have seen, things we have experienced. So those things are common, and do not consider yourself going crazy when they happen. Withdrawal, hiding from the reality and the pain, fear of expressing depth of pain. I think some people just clam up because they're afraid to scream out loud because they hurt so much. And they won't talk to people because they're afraid that they will overwhelm someone else with their pain. And I'll tell you the truth, there are people who want you to say, when I ask, how are you doing? You're supposed to say, fine, when you're not. When you're not. And so people just don't talk to you. They'll avoid you. But there will be someone who'll say, how are you doing? And you'll say, not so well. And they'll say, sorry to hear that. And they'll leave. But there will be others who'll say, want to talk about it? Want to talk about it? These people can be a real blessing and benefit. Sometimes people in times of grief avoid routine tasks. Some will not even go to work. Some will struggle with trying to discover, where am I in life right now? I know where I used to be. I'm not sure where I am now. They may avoid family gatherings. They may avoid family members. They may fail to eat properly. Oh, please eat properly. You remember your body's going with you on this journey? Treat it well. It needs to be strong. It may even need some exercise. It may need some deep breathing, and it needs some good food along the way. Remember, I will not always feel as I do now. I am doing okay. Grief will not hurt me. I will make it through my loss as others have made it through theirs. I will not rush through my grief. The holidays are coming. I want to give you about 3 or 4 minutes on that. Remember why you're grieving in the holidays. Because of your love. It's because of the meaning of that person in your life. So when the pain comes, accept it for what it is. A reminder of the depth of that love. It is a reminder of the depth of your love. And you can be grateful for the depth of your love. You may want to get out a picture album and look at old pictures and cry because of the sweetness of the memories. You may want to talk to family members and say, what made Mama special to you? What made Mama special to you? What made this person so important in my life? What made this person important in your life? What are you doing? You are cultivating strength out of those memories as a part of your recovery process. I want to thank you all for being here tonight. I know that we've had some tears tonight in the audience. That's fine. That's fine. Tears are God's gift to help you go through pain. I was talking to one man, and this will be my last illustration. Just recently, he had lost his mother about a year ago. And he said, I'm not like anybody else. When I am sad, I laugh. And people look at me as if I'm crazy. He said, I cannot help it. Some people cry, I laugh. You have no idea, he said, sitting across from Kay and me. He said, you have no idea how hard I had to control my pain at the funeral because it comes out as laughter. Why? Because he's a unique individual. There's only one like him in the whole world. And he expresses his grief just as you do in your own way. Let's close with a prayer. Father, you know grief. Your Son. You know grief, sometimes our behavior. And Father, we know grief, but not as you do. We're incapable of feeling grief to the depth that you do. We can't even understand it, and sometimes, Father, we don't understand our own grief. But we do know this, that grief is a sign of our concern. It is a sign of our care, a sign of significance of something that's happened in our life. And we rejoice that we've been given the opportunity to love, to care, to show concern, for things to be significant and important to us. And Father, as we work our way through grief to a new kind of life, we know that those who love us would want us to live again fully. In Jesus' name, amen.